kind of kicks off a discussion that we're going to have here about Jewish identity, which is you have all of these different areas of your life, whether it's the tech company, whether it's the kosher certification, whether it's your work as a rabbi within the congregation. So all of these different areas sort of build your Jewish life, it seems.
Exactly.
Do you feel that they impact your identity as well? Or do you believe
Certainly.
that identity and activity are separate?
No, I certainly think that my activities help to define who I am, and I would imagine that the opposite is true as well. Because of who I am, I interpret that in my actions, in what I do in the community, in terms of the teaching that I do, in terms of the counseling I give, how I write, how I speak, etc.
One thing I wanted to talk about, sort of leaping from what we just talked about, we are a club, but we're not sure who is included and who decides our boundaries. Can you expand on that a little bit?
The problem, I would say, with the Jewish community being both a faith group and also that we sort of made up this word peoplehood. What exactly do we mean by a peoplehood? Do we, for instance, feel a close bond with someone who also considers himself to be Jewish but looks nothing like us and believes differently than we do?
I think that reflects a lot on this kind of broadening idea of Jewish identity. And I like what you say, these are decisions that each individual member of the tribe must make. And it's really, it seems to be placing the responsibility of creating a Jewish identity on the person who's creating the identity.
I find that the halachic system is binding, but for millennia, that halachic system has been open to interpretation. So there's always choice, right? If you take two ultra-Orthodox Jews and you say to them, is there choice in Judaism, their sort of knee-jerk reaction might be to say, of course there's no choice in Judaism. There's this system that we believe in. It's called halacha. It's misinai. And that's what we have today. But then if you said to those two ultra-Orthodox Jews, why do you interpret certain core values or certain laws differently? They might not use the terminology, but ultimately they're making a choice between one option and another within the system.
Being Jewish and having that identity is really, I think, a very free choice that we have in America. Part of the mission and what I see, you talking about is giving people the inspiration and the tools to make that choice to stay
Right.
Jewish.
It really does go back to the Haskalah, to the German Enlightenment period. We're enlightened Jews, and I think that we're still trying to figure out exactly what that means. I think that in the 21st century, no matter what your age or where you live, you're also still trying to figure out what it means to be both Jewish and a member of the larger society. Someone who considers himself to simply be a cultural Jew. They're making choices as well. Are they a cultural Jew because they like a bagel and lox? Or are they a cultural Jew because they have membership to the JCC and they're making a conscious decision to play basketball at the JCC as opposed to the local community center?
I want to touch on this idea of cultural Judaism because sort of the heart of our argument is sort of looking at this idea of what is a culturally Jewish person. In a global society, what it means to be culturally something doesn't really mean what it used to. And by that, I mean, particularly in America, you don't as strictly belong into one little group. Culture being fluid now. This idea of, well, at least we can keep people Jewish through culture might not work. And I would aggressively say isn't going to work in the long term.
Yeah, I think it's sort of dangerous sometimes, the terminology that we use, because if I said to you, I know a cultural Jew, you might very well interpret that to mean someone who is secular, perhaps agnostic. They like their bagels and lox, and they read Philip Roth novels. It's a very narrow way of thinking of things. We sometimes presume that if someone says, I go to synagogue every Shabbat, that we know something about their theology, and we don't. And that's why it is confusing that Judaism is both a faith and also a people. And that's why when I talk about a club, we're all very confused because none of us really know. None of us really knows who is in charge, who's the gatekeeper. Forget matrilineal, patrilineal. That's almost, in conversions, that's almost besides the point. The real question is, if someone believes that they're Jewish, which part of the Jewish do we assume they're talking about?
I don't know when, if at all, we'll ever come to a point where we're able to simply let go of our need to label people.
Sometimes I think it's important that we sort of just get over some of our hang-ups and focus on what's the wisdom, what's the common teaching that we have to offer to the world based on our Torah.